Let's get right to some breaking news for you. A Butler police officer has been fired after complaints about a racially insensitive Facebook post. As News 3 first reported yesterday, that officer was placed on administrative leave pending an investigation of the post. That investigation led to the discovery of the officer being in violation of policy. We will have more on police relations coming up later on in this newscast.
We begin this morning with a tragic update. An Alabama police officer was killed in the line of duty late last night. Now, it happened in Moody, Alabama, about 20 miles east of Birmingham. Officers were initially called to a motel, the Super 8, in Moody on the Moody Parkway. Moody Police Sergeant Stephen Williams was with MPD for 3 years and is a 23-year law enforcement veteran. He was the nightside sergeant. Police have 2 suspects in custody, a man and a woman. Chief Thomas Hunt described Sergeant Williams as someone who took pride in his word.
Oh, he was awesome. He was awesome. Just a good man, good person, funny to be around. He was one of my Chief Turner Officer of the Year awards a couple of years ago. Very thorough in his paperwork, very thorough as a sergeant, good teacher, good mentor. A lot of guys looked up to Stephen as a very good close friend.
Now, this time, authorities are not releasing details as far as the motive or what the initial call was for when Sergeant Williams reported to that motel. That case remains under investigation by Aaliyah and the St. Clair Sheriff's Office. Well, a heads up, if you live in Georgia, you may see a decrease on your power bill for the month of June. $21 to be exact. According to Georgia Power, customers using 1,000 kilowatt hours will receive an $11.29 credit. This comes from a one-time $51.5 million credit approved by the Georgia Public Service Commission. That credit pairs with new lower fuel rates recently announced by Georgia Power. That means you'll save a total of around $21.55. But eligibility for that credit will vary based on usage from 2018. The savings will apply to June bills for customers who had active accounts as of December 31st of 2018 and are still active or are receiving a final bill as of June 2020. All right, thank you, Nicole. And straight ahead, a look at the number of coronavirus cases in the 2-state region. Coming up, it's Election Day in Georgia, and WRBL News 3 is your local election headquarters. We'll break down important things you need to know before the polls open this morning. Plus, a look at celebrations of George Floyd's life, including here in the Plains. News 3 this morning starts now.
On your side. This is News 3 this morning.
And a very good Tuesday morning to you, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for News 3 this morning. I'm Greg Lloyd. My co-anchor and good friend Bria Berry will see you later today for News 3 Midday. Let's begin this Tuesday morning with a look at the latest coronavirus numbers in both Georgia and Alabama. Right now, Georgia reports at least 52,497 cases with 2,208 deaths. In Alabama, there are at least 20,590 cases and 714 deaths. Now, those numbers are confirmed through the state's departments of public health each day. One of the busiest offices in the Columbus government suddenly closed. City officials confirm one of the workers in the Muskogee County Tax Commissioner's office tested positive for COVID-19. Now, the office remains closed today, so more workers can be tested. In the last 2 weeks, long lines have extended outside of the building. At 8 yesterday morning, there were notices from Tax Commissioner Lulu Huff on the door stating that the office is closed, but the reason was not stated. City Manager Isaiah Hughley has been in communication with Huff.
She proceeded to make sure that she protects all of the employees and the public, and she indicated that she was going to have the entire office tested because they had all been in close proximity to the positive test result.
It's unclear how much, if any, a contact the COVID-19 positive employee had with the general public. The office is scheduled to reopen tomorrow morning at 8:30. The management of 3 Columbus nursing and rehabilitation facilities has been anxiously awaiting the results of a mass COVID-19 testing. The Hospital Authority of Columbus owns and operates Muskogee Manor, Orchard View, and Azalea Trace. And the results from those more than 700 tests are now in. The tests were conducted by the Department of Public Health on May 27th and May 28th, but the results, they didn't come back until Friday. News 3's Chuck Williams brings us more.
The positive aspect of the recent COVID testing of staff and residents at Muskogee Manor, Orchard View, and Azalea Trace is that most of the tests were negative. Muskogee Manor has been dealing with a COVID-19 outbreak since mid-April. There have been 26 of the 108 residents test positive. 7 have died. Another 34 staffers have tested positive at Muskogee Manor. It's been a different story at the other 2 Hospital Authority facilities, but they didn't know until the test results came back.
There was some uncertainty while we were awaiting the results, that's for sure. We were always nervous about what we might have, but we're very fortunate for the results that we received.
None of the 80 Azalea Trace residents have tested positive. 3 staff members have, including 1 in the most recent testing. 1 resident at Orchard View tested positive, but that test came at a local hospital where the resident has been for more than a week. There have been 4 staff members at Orchard View test positive, including 2 in the most recent testing. Once the virus gets into a facility, it's almost impossible to control.
That's correct, because the symptoms are not showing. Most everyone that's testing positive is asymptomatic. There's no way to detect who's got it and who doesn't when they're walking around.
News 3's Chuck Williams reporting. Now, the facilities have done at least 3 mass testings at Muskogee Manor, and those who are positive are being isolated from other residents. Hayes tells News 3 that the Hospital Authority is working to have another mass testing of staff and residents in the near future. Are you looking to travel soon? Well, now you can add 39 states and 5 countries to your list of options. The Pentagon lifted travel restrictions to countries that include Bahrain, Belgium, Germany, Japan, and the UK. The restrictions, of course, were put in place to try and limit the spread of coronavirus. But the Pentagon said the decision was based on 3 things. First, shelter-in-place orders being lifted in those areas. Second, fewer and fewer people with flu-like and COVID-19-like symptoms over the course of 2 weeks. And third, fewer new COVID-19 cases or positive tests over 2 weeks. Some states still haven't met that criteria, including California, Florida, and North Carolina. Well, the World Health Organization this morning saying it's rare for an asymptomatic coronavirus patient to spread COVID-19. But that announcement comes with a big caveat. The term asymptomatic might not mean exactly what you think. The WHO analyzed data from countries that perform contact tracing. It found people who tested positive but have absolutely no symptoms rarely infect someone else. But the WHO says some people who think they have no symptoms actually have mild or unusual ones. Those patients can pass on the virus. Pre-symptomatic cases are also contagious. Those patients start off feeling okay, but later they get sick. The WHO says while asymptomatic transmission is rare, it's still possible. If you haven't already, we want to invite you to go ahead and download the News 3 app, and don't forget to turn on the notifications. That way you don't miss important alerts about breaking news. Well, George Floyd's hometown said farewells to him last night. The 46-year-old died after being arrested in Minneapolis on May 25th. And in the 2 weeks since, his name has become a worldwide rallying cry. Danya Bacchus reports from his hometown of Houston.
A long line of mourners waited in blazing Texas heat for a chance to say goodbye to George Floyd, a man most of them had never met.
That could have easily been my son in there, and so I feel like I should, as a mom, should express the importance of, you know, what it is to be black in America.
Thousands turned out in Houston Monday for a public viewing for Floyd, who grew up nearby.
It's amazing to see all the support, and we just just trying to come together for our brother, fallen brother.
Floyd's death in police custody in Minnesota 2 weeks ago sparked nationwide protest and growing calls for police reform.
George Floyd was a childhood friend of mine. We've been knowing each other since single age. It was just terrifying for me to see how that officer did this guy.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott was among those paying their respects. He and former Vice President Joe Biden met privately with Floyd's family.
Thank y'all so much for coming out to support us. And all the families that are here with me today, Michael Brown, Eric Garner, Aubrey, it just hurt.
In his final moments, George Floyd called out for his mother. On Tuesday, the 46-year-old will be buried next to her following a private funeral service. Former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin appeared in court Monday on a video link from jail. The 19-year veteran kneeled on Floyd's neck for nearly 9 minutes, not getting up until after he had lost consciousness. The judge set bail at $1.25 million for Chauvin, who's charged with second-degree murder. He's due back in court on June 29th. Danya Backus, CBS News, Houston.
Now, George Floyd's funeral will be private, and only invited guests will be permitted inside the Fountain of Praise Church. However, the event will be televised by CBS News. Well, the city of Opelika hosted a wreath-laying ceremony to honor the memory of George Floyd. Officials from Opelika, Auburn, Smith Station, and Lee County all invited to participate in yesterday's event. Opelika City Council President Pro Tem Patsy Jones hosted. News 3 spoke with some who attended.
This was a vision that came to me this past weekend, and I shared it, and we did this immediately. And we did it because we wanted to show a reverence before the final rites of Mr. George Floyd.
I feel like Opelika, the community of Lee County, had to come together, right, and bridge that gap, because we can't use this as a stepping stone just for political insight or political gain. We have to actually implement some policy behind it, right?
At least 50 people came out to pay their respects. As we head into break on this Tuesday, we want to thank you so much for trusting WRBL News 3 this morning as your favorite source as you're getting your day started. Next, experts worry that President Trump may push a coronavirus vaccine too soon. We'll explain why coming up. At first, let's check back in with meteorologist Nicole Phillips.